was wondering, and as I mentioned before the break, if you're a Commanders fan, I'd love to hear from you. What's the breaking point for you? Ron Rivera is going into the season as the head coach. You have two guys who essentially are interim coaches in waiting if it goes south. When would you pull the plug on Ron Rivera? What does it take? Like if the team is
1-4.
Yeah, I was gonna say if the team's 1-3, what are you doing?
Maybe
what are you
not
thinking?
1-3.
No, that's way too early.
All right, they
But-
lose,
but-
so
1-4, I don't
so
think
they're
is too
1-3.
early.
They lose the next one. They're to 1-4 now.
I'd have to
Hold
look
on.
at their schedule again.
I think the more interesting question, JP, along the same lines, though, is what is Josh Harris's threshold, right?
Well, we have no idea.
We'll have right, but that's the guess.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what our threshold is. What is Josh Harris's threshold going to be? And what is his track record?
I mean,
how many coaches has he fired I know he just got rid of Doc Rivers, but how many coaches has he fired mid-season?
I'm not sure on that one. But like you mentioned, we have the most recent information that he moved on from Doc Rivers. They hired Nick Nurse, right, to take over the 76ers.
Mm-hmm.
And Doc had a couple years left on his deal. And to be fair, the Sixers were pretty good. Now, disappointing because they weren't getting beyond the second round of the playoffs, but a pretty good team. It wasn't like he was doing an awful job, and they moved on to Nick Nurse.
But the difference here is Josh Harris never hired Ron Rivera, so there's no connection. There's no reason to keep him. So one thing, if you hired Doc Rivers and things just weren't working out, you decide to go in another direction. But there's no reason to keep Ron Rivera if they're struggling.
But is he going to come in right away, Jason? Is he going to come in right away?
No idea.
No idea. And shake things up and put his footprint on the team like mid-season? Like, I'm not having this. I'm freaking Josh Harris.
Mm-hmm.
I'm moving on. I'm elevating Bieniemy.
He could.
Does he have to ask his 17 other owners?
Right. I don't think so.
I kind of think that they are tied hand in hand. So I would just say my threshold would be 1-4. If they were 1-4, let's put Bieniemy in charge or put Jack Del Rio in charge. And I think that Josh Harris might have a similar thinking because, as Jason says, he's got no ties to Ron Rivera, and he's not a dummy. He knows what's been happening here the last 3 years. He's buying a team not blind. He's buying a team that has been underwhelming, and this is year 4 of the head coach. He gets it. He's been around sports. He knows that you need to be better.
But is he going to come in right away and really upset the apple cart?
Well, right away would
mid-season.
To me, right away would be firing him now. Or firing him on
It's too late.
21st.
It's too late. It's too late.
Why? You don't think another guy, like if they did fire Ron Rivera and say, okay, Jack Del Rio, you're going to be the head coach, they'd be perfectly capable. They wouldn't be in a different position right now.
I mean,
they would be able to run it, but they don't have their players. They don't have their system in place. Right? This roster,
if you're hiring
that's the other
somebody
thing.
that's in-house, they're familiar.
Yeah, but there's no reason really to do it now.
Why would
as
you
opposed
do that?
To
Just,
yeah, that's not going to happen. There's no reason. And if you look at the schedule, they could start 1-4.
Sure.
I mean, I would expect them to beat Arizona, even though we have no idea how good or bad Sam Howell's going to be. I would expect them to beat Arizona, considering Arizona has they've lost a bunch of the players that they had in the last couple of years. Murray's not going to be there. But so that could be that one win. But they play Denver on the road, Buffalo, and Philly in the next 3 weeks. They could easily lose. They could easily They could easily lose all 3 of those, and then they play Chicago on a Thursday night. So short week. It's a home game. But they could start 1-4. They could. I would expect them to start at best 2-3.
I would say the earliest I would make a move, if I was to make a move, and I think it would be a dramatic move, because I don't think they often help, like mid-season. Like all of a sudden you're going to see a dramatic turnaround, would be after that Falcon game.
Okay. So
potentially.
That's week 6.
Because then if they were like 1-5, because I think they actually have a reasonable, in a best-case scenario, they could actually be 3-3. If they beat if they beat Arizona, I think, Denver would be a toss-up. Let's say Denver, Chicago, and Atlanta are all toss-ups. If they can win 2 of those, then it could be 3-3 or they could be 1-5. If they're 1-5 heading into the Giants, it doesn't give you a lot of time. Their bye week is late. So
bye week is not until week 14, right?
Right. So it's not like there's a convenient bye week time where they could do it. Maybe after that Bear game where you had 10 days, to prepare for a new regime.
Right.
Maybe that would be it.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, Josh Harris could say, all right, this is just it's a free period. I'm not going to make any major changes this year. Let's play it out. And then at the end of the year, unless the Commanders, get 10 or 11 wins, there's no reason to fire Rivera after 11 wins. But a new owner might come in and say, all right, let's play it out, and then I'll make all the major changes in the offseason.
Right, he doesn't want to come in and seem like a meddling owner, right? He's not going to want to come in and seem like a Dan Snyder Jr.
How do you know?
I don't.
He might.
Because he's a classy person. He's not going to want to be like that.
I mean, I think they shook it up. If you go back to the history of the Sixers early on, they shook it up pretty fast. Let's go to the phones. 800-636-1067. Ron is in Poolsville on line 1. Hey, Ron, what do you think?
Hey, I think if he does not have if he has a losing record after 6 games, I think you pull the plug on him because you have so much history. You know what you have with Ron Rivera. You know he's been acting as a general manager, selecting candidates for a starting quarterback, 2 of which were free agents that have just been absolute dismal failures. You have all that, and you're just not, you don't see that the team is moving in the right direction. You really don't.
But here would be another reason. Here would be another reason, Ron. If you start out 1-4 or 1-5, like you said, and then Bieniemy's in his first year, Bieniemy could be a possible replacement.
Of course.
Maybe you see what Bieniemy can do in the next 10 weeks.
Yep.
And Bieniemy might have a winning record. Then Josh Harris doesn't have to look outside the box. He can say, all right, Bieniemy's our guy.
Team may respond better to him.
Maybe. Yeah.
What if they're 1-4 though, or 1-5, and the offense is stinking? You're going to elevate Bieniemy,
Maybe not.
who co-signed the Howell thing?
No, that's a good point. You might not want to do that.
Did he co-sign, or did he that's what he walked into? It's not like that's his guy.
He's the offensive coordinator.
I know, but it's not his guy. He didn't draft him.
Yeah, but you can easily throw Ron under the bus for if Howell stinks and the offense stinks, and then sidestep that landmine and then find new footing next year.
Yep.
You could.
You could easily do that. And then all of a sudden you pick a guy, and then Bieniemy says, this is my hand-picked guy.
Correct.
Howell was under the Rivera regime. I tried to do everything I could with Howell, but it's not the characteristics I was looking for in a quarterback.
I just think
you can easily spin it that way.
Eric, I just think when you look at the schedule before that bye week, they play 6 road games in the first 10 weeks, and 2 of the 4 home games are Buffalo and Philly. I just think it's going to be very difficult to get off to a really good start unless Howell just blows us away and plays way above his means. I just don't expect that. But that's just a lot.
No, I think they're going to struggle. How about this? I'll go so far as to say this, Jason. I think, it's going to be a tough year. They have a very difficult schedule.
Yeah.
You could almost go so far as to say game 1 is a must-win.
I think you are right.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Game season.
No, I think you're right.
No. Because you have to get off to a decent start, and you're going to lose to Buffalo, barring a miracle. You're going to lose to Philly, barring a miracle, right? And then, the other games are just pure toss-ups. So if you lose to Arizona, and then you go on the road to Denver. And then you go on the road and lose to Denver, you're 0-2. If you're 0-2, you're automatically 0-4.
Right. Then you got Buffalo and Philly the next 2 weeks. You're right.
Yeah. So you have to win week 1. If you lose week 1 and lose week 2, you're guaranteed 0-4.
Pretty much.